And first up today is Vladimir wants to get blind drunk on a small boat and go pike fishing, and this is by our friend Helpful Tadpole. So it is time again. This story takes place on Åland in southern Finland. And it also features our favorite Russian dude Vladimir. This story starts with 3 Russian dudes that had booked a 3-day fishing package with 4 nights of accommodation in a luxury beachfront villa and food for all 3 days. Basically all-inclusive fishing edition. As you might imagine, this was not a cheap experience. When we discussed the package, the question of alcohol consumption did come up, and I did inform them that a little bit is okay as long as nobody gets to the point of it being a safety concern. It also says in the terms and conditions, you have to approve when paying for the reservation. So they arrive and check in, no problems. The fun starts the next day when they show up down at the dock to go out fishing the first day. 2 of the guys come in proper fishing gear, with rods and equipment, looking ready for a day of pike fishing. But Vladimir seems to have other priorities. He is holding a cooler in one hand and a large bottle of some kind of brown spirits in the other. When I see this, I remind the group about the alcohol policy, and to this, Vladimir laughs, uncorks the bottle and starts chugging. He drinks the whole thing, standing right there on the pier in some weird show of dominance, I guess. I had a tosser do that at one point. When I was working in retail, I said, you can't do that, you can't drink alcohol on the premises, we can sell it, you just can't consume it there. And he goes, what are you going to do, you're going to call the police? And I said, yep, that's right, because he just chugged half a bottle of Buckfast, I think it was. Well, you're not going to call the police? I said, no, yeah, I am. Can't recall if we did or not. Because that store could have lost its license if it emerged they were allowing people to consume alcohol. Anyway, it's nice to see that being a tosser is universal, I guess. While this is going on, I just stand there in my boat watching, trying to make sense of what is happening before me. Vladimir's friends don't seem too impressed with their friend making a scene first thing in the morning. At least his friends have some sense. After finishing the whole bottle, he looks at me and says, "There, all done." So I'm guessing he thinks he can go on the tour as long as he doesn't drink all that while on the boat. Well, sorry, Vladimir, but that's not how this works. You are not going on the boat today. This was not the response Vladimir expected. He started laughing, thinking it was a funny joke. But when I insisted and he realized I was not going to let him on the boat today, he absolutely lost it. He screams and shouts in equal parts English, and what I assume is a long list of Russian profanities. They're very good at that. He then says if I don't let him on the boat, they will go home and I will have to pay them back for the whole trip. Well, no, Vladimir. I will not pay you back as clearly stated in the terms and conditions. Always got to read those. The free cancellation is only until 7 days before the trips, and it very clearly states that the guide is free to prevent anyone from going on the boat, and that we may cancel the tour at any point with no refunds if guests get drunk. You knew this, we told you, you did approve the terms and conditions. The accommodation is also 7 days free cancellation, so sure, I'm not going to force you to do anything, but you are not getting any money back. He of course threatens with the usual. We will hear from his lawyers. If they're good lawyers, they'll tell him to shut the hell up, and he will call the police or whatever, at which point the police will laugh at him. Who cares anyway? It's not like it's going to work anyway. After a long and heated argument in Russian with his friends, Vladimir storms off and his 2 friends come back to me and say they still want to go fishing, so we go off without Vladimir. As it turns out, Vladimir and the 2 other guys are childhood friends, friends through circumstance. They were there, so we became friends. One of them is somehow related to Vladimir. Someone made a mistake somewhere along the way, like a cousin or something. And Vladimir is stinking rich. Well, if you recall from one of the previous stories, he did have a big wad of cash on him. He seems to think money can buy him anything. He is apparently a low-ranking government official in Moscow. He owns a yacht and stuff, and he paid for the whole trip for his friends. I do not see Vladimir for the 2 days after either. Because apparently, the booze is more important than fishing with his friends. The friends were perfectly nice and only had 1 beer each for lunch and dinner when out on the boat. We caught a lot of pikes. So I guess I have taken some ill-earned gains from a corrupt Russian official with a drinking problem. I mean, that money still spends. I later heard from a lady that works at the resort I had arranged their accommodation at, that Vladimir had tried to convince the receptionist and even the CEO of the hotel that I am bad. They needed a refund, and they should fire me. Only problem is, I don't work for the hotel to start with. They are only a business partner I buy accommodation from occasionally. Still waiting to hear from Vladimir's lawyer 8 years later. Alright, second story today is... Kid wants to participate with me in talent show. I decline. He thinks he's entitled to the money anyways. By Basie1130. So back when I was in middle school, they announced a talent show at the end of the year. I immediately got hyped for it and signed up as soon as possible and started practicing. I play the piano. I also had a friend, Christopher. Anyways, he wanted to do a collaboration with me. I was fine with it. He was playing the drums. Cut to maybe 2 months before the talent show, he got into a really annoying habit of mocking me for my disability, being deaf. I'm not talking good humorous fun, he was legitimately bullying me now that I look back on it. As in convincing me I was in trouble for not hearing instructions properly. I eventually decided that I didn't want to play a duet with him anymore, since I wasn't about to do it with a guy who can't even respect my disability. He actually had no idea until a day before, since middle school me couldn't have been bothered to tell him. In hindsight, I do regret that. I probably should have told him sooner. Live and learn, don't worry about it. Cue him getting extremely angry. First arguing that I was racist, which was a complete lie. Next he started begging for me to let him. I eventually just walked away without a word. The day of the talent show came around. He played a really rushed drum solo, pretty much what he was going to play along with me. I had been practicing for Elise at the time, so decided to play that. I ended up getting first place, and he got almost last place out of 20 people. I don't remember. He was fuming and so mad. It was a Friday, and that $150 prize money was waiting to be spent. Excellent. So I took a trip to a bookstore and bought myself some new books. I came back to school Monday, and the first thing he says when I see him, "Yeah, can I have $75? We were gonna play together." I said no, since I wasn't going to play with someone who mocked my disability. He kept asking and even threatened to make the teachers give him the money. How? That's not how teachers work. I offered him to go right ahead, and he went straight for a teacher that wasn't even here on the day of the show. It ended up not working for him. He kept pestering me for the money, and I eventually just gave him the cold shoulder and didn't say a word. I mean, to him, I was completely and totally deaf and couldn't hear a word. I eventually abandoned and stopped being friends with him for the better. To clarify, I am deaf with hearing implants. If they're on, I can hear pretty much the same as anyone else. If not, I'm deaf. And next up is entitled Guest Wants to Open My Collector Doll for Her Kid, by Ararins. I moved out of my parents' house last year. My parents have kept my childhood bedroom as it is, with all my old toys, belongings, my clothes, etc., because I go home to visit most weekends and help around the house. This includes some collector edition Barbies and dolls that my dad bought for me when I was younger. I keep them in their boxes, stored on a high shelf. There's about 10 dolls, some of which are collector's items now because of their age and condition. I haven't thought about selling them because I just like keeping things my dad bought for me. I guess I have attachment to them because he worked in the US while we lived in Canada without him, and the toys were given when he visited us. This past weekend, I was visiting my mom, and she had brought some of her friends over. One particularly entitled friend, Jane, brought her granddaughter, a 5-year-old. I told my mom not to let the child up in my room after a bad experience with kids taking my belongings and breaking them. I stayed downstairs and worked in a room. Eventually, I heard Jane talking with the granddaughter upstairs. I then heard them opening doors and talking. I didn't go upstairs until I heard her say something about dolls. I went upstairs and asked them to both leave my room, but Jane was already in my closet at this point and pointing at the dolls. Of course, they pointed at the boxes of Barbies. She pulled one off, showed it to the granddaughter, and told me she wanted to play with it. When I told her, no, it's in the box for a reason, she seemed irritated at me and handed the box back to me. She left my room and the child started crying, well, good, that'll be a lesson for it, and saying she wanted to play with dolls. I went through my things, found some of the dolls that I'd opened as a kid and played with, and offered them to her downstairs. But she kept insisting on the princess doll. They didn't go back upstairs, but it left me a little anxious now about my room. My mom is telling me to put a lock on my door because Jane visits often. Well, sounds like Jane needs to not be visiting at all, and often tends to wander around. But I'm baffled that she would go into someone's house and think it's okay to touch their stuff. I'm from a South Asian background, by the way, and this tends to be the attitude of some older women that need a slap, quite frankly. Try slapping her. They don't understand collectible culture or sentimentality to gifts. They think they're able to do whatever they want, open whatever they want. Why do I get the feeling if you tried doing whatever you wanted with their crap, it would be a problem? For extra info, we installed a lock this morning on my bedroom door, and my mom warned her friend not to go in my room in the future. What you might want to do is wire a battery up to it, maybe like a remote-controlled thing, so if anyone that doesn't have their, the control tries to turn the handle. But that might be a little too malicious. I don't know. I sometimes have a hard time judging these things. I live in a very small condo. It isn't big enough for me to bring all my belongings there. I have left a lot of clothing and personal items with my parents. And fourth story today. He felt he deserved our inheritance because he married our mom. That dick can't be that good. No dick's that good. I apologize for the vulgarity, but it's true. So I've been reading these posts for ages, and I'm always shocked at the level of entitlement some people feel. This happened a few years ago to my sister and myself, and I figured I'd share some of the madness that's come my way as well. Mine and my sister's mother passed away whilst my sister and I were in our early 20s a few years ago. Unfortunately, our father is not involved, so we're very much a small family unit now. Prior to this, Mom did not make great decisions, especially regarding her chosen partner. After being the other woman for 7 years, he divorced his first wife and married my mom 6 months later. My mom sadly passed away a year later, whilst in her late 40s. You have my sincerest condolences. Now, her chosen partner, Richard, because he's a dick, was a disgusting pervert. He had been leering and making comments to my sister and I for years. My mom did not care as long as she was happy. Even told me she'd choose him over me if it came to that. Thanks, Mom. This is to say that my sister and I despised this man with our very souls, and the only reason we put up with him was for our mom. So our mom passes away. Now what? Well, Richard is made executor of the estate as per Mom's will. He gets to live in her house until he dies. Not going to comment on that. Whilst it is in my and my sister's names. Any money is to be distributed to my sister and myself. I am sure you can already tell that this was not Richard's plan. I very luckily work in the same office that was handling my mom's estate. I got asked one day to sign some documents, and thank God I noticed that Richard has put himself as a payee, and not the trust for myself and my sister. This is about $500,000 in our currency. Nice. That he is elected to pay out to himself, with no instruction from the will, and have my sister and I sign it away under the guise of handling everything for us. My sister and I immediately cut him off, shut down the transfer, and begin the legal proceedings to have him removed as executor. My grandfather, who adored my mom to the ends of the earth and back, tried speaking to Richard to see why he would do this. Greed. According to Richard, he deserved it. Oh, Richard, darling, you deserve a lot of things, but the money's not one of them. After putting up with my mom and her kids, he deserved to be paid and live in the house for free till he dies. This man who sexually harassed both me and my sister, who pressured my family into uncomfortable situations. This man who sexually harassed both me and my sister, who pressured my family into uncomfortable situations, who convinced my mother that my sister and I were just against them, felt that he deserved more than my sister or I, who had lost our mother. I made sure to put him through hell, lawyers' meeting after lawyers' meeting. Threats. We forced him to move out and give up executorship, but he still ended up getting some money in exchange for disappearing from our lives. All I can hope is that his entitled butt is lonely, bitter, and miserable. Karma is the fact that he is divorced, a widow. His kids don't speak to him, and no amount of money is going to fix that. And final story for today is Guy tripped me on a plane by bewildering stupidity. I, 22 and female, was on a flight home with my friend, 21 and female, when we landed at Detroit Airport. There were a lot of issues, and they kept moving us to different gates because of storms that diverted other planes and flooding. We had a connection and had no idea where we were in relation to the gate we needed to go to. It wasn't a big deal at first, since our connection didn't leave for another hour, but with all the trouble, our connection was about to leave in 15 minutes when we were finally being deboarded. I was hoping it would delay our connection, but just our luck, it was still on time. I guess maybe it was more of an arrival issue than a departure issue. We flew economy and had gotten seats in the back since they were the only ones with an aisle seat. I have bladder issues, and either needed to be in the aisle seat or would take the middle seat so I could just crawl over my friend a few times and not a stranger. We only had our backpacks on us and nothing in the overhead compartments, so we decided it was time to book it as soon as they let us start our deboarding. We couldn't miss the flight, otherwise the next one would be in about 12 hours, and no food places were open, so it would be vending machine dinner. Nom 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 nom. And if my checked luggage beat me home, I wouldn't have the medication I packed in there. I know, stupid not to take it in my carry-on, but I hadn't even thought about it since I wouldn't need it until after our plane arrived home. So, the plane begins to deboard, and we start to stand in the aisle when a man in front of us leans out like he's grabbing something. We waited, but then I realized he wasn't moving. I poked my friend who was in front of me, and she asked him to move because we had a short connection.
No.
Please, we have a connection leaving in like 10 minutes.
So do I.
So you get up too and let's go.
No, I'm not doing that.
My friend has a hotter temper than I do, and since I didn't want to get no-flied, I swapped spots so I was in front of her. I explained to this guy that we can't miss this flight since our checked luggage has medicine I need for the night, and practically begged this guy with my sweetest customer service attitude if we could please sneak past him. He said no again, and his wife next to him was smirking at us like she'd won something by holding us up. I told him that he's allowed to be mad at us for going in front of him, and he's allowed to think we're terrible, but he cannot touch us, so I was just going to go past him. I gave him another apology, so I took a big step over his leg to get past. He then raised his leg up. I don't know if he meant to. Just stop me or trip me, he meant to trip you. But the latter happened, and I face-planted in the middle of the airplane aisle. Mind you, I'm not a small girlie, so not only did I make a loud smack, but I probably also shook the damn plane. Oh, come on, I don't, you're that big. No. Which made sure even the first class could feel the earthquake that just happened. The guy had completely retreated back into his seat when everyone turned around to see what had happened, so it looked even better for me that I just randomly fell on my face. He was just looking at his wife while she was covering her mouth, either trying not to laugh or because she was still in shock from what just happened. It was dead silent while my friend helped me up and another passenger helped me grab something that fell off my bag. I didn't say anything else other than thank you to the girl who picked up my backpack dangly, and just pulled my friend away before she could spit more than just insults at the guy. I know damn well she couldn't have taken him, but that's never stopped her before. That's a good friend. I did my best not to look as mortified as I felt as we made our way up the aisle. We asked a few people if we could go in front of them because of our connection, and the only people who said no were the people who had done the same thing to get closer to the front of the plane. My friend wanted to say something to the flight or gate attendant about the guy, but 1, we didn't have time for that, and 2, I just wanted to go home and was already embarrassed enough. Thankfully, our gate wasn't too far away, and we made it as one of the last 4 people in the boarding line. Meanwhile, I watched the man and his wife book it across the airport to make it to their flight. A spiteful part of me kinda hopes they didn't make it, but we'll never know. As an aside, I completely get if you didn't like the fact that I basically tried to cut in line. Life stuff, whatever. I didn't like it either, and out of all 4 flights we'd taken during our trip, I only tried to do it this once. And you're well within your rights to be mad like this guy, but personally, I don't think tripping me was warranted. No, it wasn't warranted. What it was, in fact, was assault. Okay, and that brings us to the end of today's video. Big thanks to everyone who allowed me to use their stories in this video. I very much appreciate it. If you would like to support the channel, you can do so by signing up for my Patreon page, which is linked down in the description. And there's also a link to my merchandise store and my Discord server if you're interested in that sort of thing. I think that's everything for now. Okay, that brings us to Hellfreezer's question of the day, and today's question is: do you have any... how different? Do you have a saying or something you add to a saying that's funny to you and probably only you? Like, for example, I said, like in the last story there, I said that man had definitely assaulted that girl. In my mind at the time, I also added, and pepper too. Whenever I hear the word assault, I go, that's assault and pepper, if it's really bad. But I think that's probably only funny to me. So let me know, do you have any silly little things like that you're willing to share in a comment below? And before we go, we'll take a look at the answer of the day from a previous video. It's a bit warmer here today. I thought all the nice weather was behind us, but we had a brief flare-up of sun. Unfortunately, it's a work day, so I can't go out. And today's answer actually comes from Idiots in the Wild 205. And before I go on, big thanks to everyone who's been giving me such positive feedback since I switched to doing Facecam, the talking head style of videos. It's been very comforting, very reassuring to know that you're enjoying this format. So we will definitely continue with it. All right, and today's answer comes from, let's see. Today's answer comes from Camwin. I know how fallible my memory is, so I write lots of stuff down. And quite right too. If that's how you get through the day, that's the best way to do it. And that brings us to the end of today's video, so until next time, thank you very much for watching, and take very good care of yourselves. Bye bye.